Hey, this is Nikki G, and welcome to Better Commander. Today we're talking about a budget-friendly legend from Baldur's Gate, Jon Irenicus, Shattered One. Hey, before we get too deep into the lore behind this fascinating fashion model of an elf wizard, consider subscribing to my channel. It's free, it's easy, and I share one portion of the alchemical secret to eternal life encoded into each video. Jon Irenicus is described as a well-muscled but abnormal-looking man, which is exactly the way my mother recently described me. Jon was obsessed with Queen Elizabeth, but he got cast out of the Elven Society and lost his pointy ears. You see, Jon was acting like a real knucklehead. He was out there, he's making clones, he's torturing civilians, and just getting up to pretty horrific chicanery. I picked this guy to do a budget build because he wants to be using really crappy creatures. Creatures that are detrimental to even have on our side of the battlefield. We want our opponents sacrificing things and generally just being pretty miserable. They'll cotton on pretty fast though, so Jon needs some protection. We're also going to be drawing cards on our opponent's turn, so it makes sense to pack some instant speed counter magic and removal. I mean, what is this guy up to? Look at him, he's just this muscly looking fitness model just shooting lasers into some dead guy's eyeballs. I mean, you know he's up to no good in that basement. Alright, Jon Irenicus, Shattered One. 2 blue and a black for a legendary creature elf wizard. It's a 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent gains control of up to 1 target creature you control. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and tap it. It's goaded for the rest of the game and gains this creature can't be sacrificed. Whenever a creature you own but don't control attacks, you draw a card. Dang, so this guy really wants us to be using crappy creatures or have creatures enter the battlefield, we get an effect, and then we can pass it off to one of our opponents. This is going to be an interesting commander to build. I think there's a lot of cards that won't see play in other formats or even other decks in Commander that we can really utilize to screw our opponents up. Apprentice Necromancer is 1 and a black for a creature zombie wizard. It's a 1/1. So you pay 1 black, sacrifice it, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature gains haste. At the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice it. So this guy I can see going into the deck and performing a very important function because our creatures are going to get removed from our opponent's sides of the battlefield. They're going to waste their removal on some big fatty that they don't want screwing up their entire game plan. And then this guy can bring it back, and then with Jon we can send it over to the other side of the battlefield, and then it can't be sacrificed. Treacherous Urge is 4 and a black for an instant. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You may put a creature card from it into play under your control. That creature gains haste, sacrifice at end of turn. So basically we look at our opponent's hand, grab the biggest creature out of it, we can swing with it, do whatever we want with it, and then pass it off to an opponent with Jon's ability at end of turn. Alright, let's start getting into some horrible creatures. Evil Eye of Urborg. I love the art on this thing. It's 4 and a black for a creature Eye. It's a 6/3. Non-Eye creatures you control can't attack. Whenever Evil Eye of Urborg becomes blocked by a creature, destroy that creature. So this guy, there's not a lot of eyes in Magic the Gathering. I think there's only about 4 and they all suck. So it's very unlikely that they'll have an eye on their side of the battlefield and this thing is just destroying their game plan and swinging into our opponents for 8 damage. Where else are you going to be able to use Flesh Reaver? So this is 1 and a black for a horror. It's a 4/4. Whenever Flesh Reaver successfully deals damage to a creature or opponent, Flesh Reaver deals an equal amount of damage to you. So you pass this off to your opponents and they have to swing with it. It's goaded. So it's dealing 6 damage to something and then 6 damage to them. This is the epitome of Phyrexian art, in my opinion. You have this fleshy Tyrannosaurus in some ambiguous red hell zone. Chef's kiss. Alright, then we have Graf Reaver. He's 1 and a black for a creature zombie warrior. It's a 3/3. It has exploit. When Graf Reaver exploits a creature, destroy target planeswalker. Alright, interesting enough. At the beginning of your upkeep, Graf Reaver deals 1 damage to you. So if we can get some incidental value out of this guy when he enters the battlefield, we may sacrifice a creature to destroy a troublesome planeswalker. If not, we're just passing off a 5/5 to somebody that's going to damage them at the beginning of every upkeep. Gut-Wrencher Oni and Pain-Racker Oni have very similar profiles. So Gut-Wrencher's 3 black for a creature Demon Spirit. It's 5/4 with Trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card if you don't control an ogre. Pain-Racker Oni is 3 black for a creature Demon Spirit. It's a 5/4 with Fear. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature if you don't control an ogre. Both of these guys go great in this deck and are going to really screw up our opponents. Wretched Anurid, I have no idea what's going on in this art, is 1 and a black mana for a creature zombie beast. It's a 3/3. Whenever another creature comes into play, you lose 1 life. Similarly, Ebon Drake is 2 and a black for a creature. It's a Drake. It's a 3/3 with flying. Whenever a player plays a spell, you lose 1 life. So putting this on the other side of the battlefield, giving this to one of our opponents, is going to drain them quite quickly through the course of a 4-player game. Rusty boy. So this is a 4 mana artifact creature elemental, has flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice an artifact other than Rust Elemental. If you can't, tap Rust Elemental and you lose 4 life. So this is going to clean out mana rocks on one of our opponent's upkeeps and then hopefully swing in for damage, and if not, it's going to cost them 4 life in any case. It's a bit of a controversial include. Plague Reaver is 2 and a black for a creature beast. It's a 6/5. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice each other creature you control. Discard 2 cards, sacrifice Plague Reaver, choose target opponent, return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep. So basically this guy, if we pass it off with Jon Irenicus, then it can't be sacrificed. However, if we put it into play and Jon's in play, at the beginning of the end step, both triggers are going to go onto the stack. Doesn't matter which order we resolve them, we still have to sacrifice each other creature we control. We can stifle that effect with a Tail's End or with a Overcharged Amalgam, or we can just let Jon die and go to the graveyard, reanimate him, or let him go to the command zone. In any case, something on our side is probably going to die. But then our opponent is stuck with this horrible creature that they can't sacrifice. Another thing we could do is bounce Jon Irenicus or whatever we have on our side of the board. Phyrexian Vat Mother is 2 black for a creature horror. It's a 4/5. Also has Infect, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you get a poison counter. It's kind of a no-brainer. If we pass this off with Jon, it's 2 hits to somebody and they're out of the game. Abyssal Persecutor is 2 black for a creature demon. It's a 6/6 with flying and trample. You can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game. So basically we swing with this all game and then towards the end we pass it off to somebody, and it doesn't really matter what they have on their side of the board. Eventually we're going to win. There's a couple cards that have this effect. Grid Monitor is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature. It's a 4/6. You can't play creature spells. And Steel Golem is basically the same thing, so it's 3 generic mana for an artifact creature Golem. It's a 3/4. You can't play creature spells. So we pass these off to our opponents and they're basically screwed until they can get rid of these things. They have to waste removal on them. Morkrut Necropod is 5 and a black for a creature Slug Horror. It's a 7/7 with Menace. Whenever Morkrut Necropod attacks or blocks, sacrifice another creature or land. This is really going to destroy our opponent's board states if we can get this out early enough. Greater Harvester, 2 black for a creature horror. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a permanent. Whenever Greater Harvester deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices 2 permanents. This thing is just going to wreck everything everywhere, make everybody sacrifice everything. It's also going to be a 7/8 going into combat. This is a non-budget upgrade. I don't have this in the budget version of the deck, but Phyrexian Negator is 2 and a black for a creature horror for a 5/5 with trample. Whenever Phyrexian Negator is dealt damage, sacrifice a permanent for each 1 damage dealt to it. So if an opponent swings with this, which they have to, it's going to be goaded into one of our other opponents. Our other opponent decides to block with one of their big creatures. It's going to basically wreck their board state. I also included quite a bit of bounce in this deck. Cards like Evacuation, 3 blue for an instant, return all creatures to their owner's hands. There's going to come a time in the game where you're going to have an opponent with a bunch of creatures and all your other opponents are dead. So you're going to want to bounce those creatures back to your hand so they can't swing at you and kill you at the end of the game. I also included some protection peaches too for Jon Irenicus, because he's going to be a big target. Your opponents are going to see that they're going to be getting crappy creatures every turn. They're going to try to destroy Jon. So you might want to put some Lightning Greaves on him or some Swiftfoot Boots. So I'm going to put the deck list into the description. You guys can goldfish it. It's a lot of fun to play. I'm going to try it out in my play group this week, see what everybody thinks about it. I think this is a really cool deck for $70. It's something that can be really interactive, mess with your opponents. It includes a lot of instant speed interaction, a lot of bounce. You'll have to be thinking and engaging with your opponents often and very carefully. So it's going to keep you in the game. So let me know what you guys think. Did I miss any cards? Is there anything you would include that I didn't include? Let me know in the comments below. And I'm going to thank you guys very much for watching. This is going to be Nicky G from Better Commander signing off.